Okay, now that there are no errors, does that mean that this is still a valid deployment? Well, not necessarily. And that is because we have to do some more groundwork to make sure that this deployment is complete in all respects, right? So for that, what we do is we go back up here and then we look at some of these entries. And for example, if you see asset type is text, you will see that there's an ability for you to fill in the value here. So far, so good, right? If you go to a Boolean setting or a Boolean asset value, for example, get all folders, this is an asset type of type bool. But you see, there is no place for us to select true or false, right? Similarly, if you go to get all queues, it is the same thing, right? So where do I fill in this data if there is no interface here for us to fill in these Boolean values? Now for that, you'll have to deploy this solutions management package. And once you deploy, those assets will be created for you in that folder, in your orchestrator folder, and then you can go there and fix it, right? So what we do is we click deploy. So a very successful deployment because you are getting the hooray blurb here. That means you have deployed it. And once this status changes to successful, you click here. You can go to solution folder directly from here. The other way is to go to the orchestrator. And you will find that you have created a folder called Automation Summarizer Demo. Remember, I had set up the name as Automation Summarizer Demo and also selected the option to create this under my root folder. And now if you click on this folder here, you're taken to the home page and you can see that there are 19 assets that have already been created. And these are the assets that you manipulated in your solutions management package. So if I click on the assets, it will take me to this page. And here you can see that you have all those settings that some of which we changed. And you can see that some of the work that we did is here. You can see not used, right? That's because we filled this in as saying that we are not going to be using this. Now comes the Boolean entries, right? We go in and we sort it by type and we tackle each of the Booleans. Now, remember, some of them are false, some of them are true, some of them are true. That's because they're already set up in the solutions management package. But is that what you need? Is that what you need? And that's why I said that this is still not complete because you have to set up these settings based on how you would like to extract your data, right? So if you want to edit this, it says use queue for summary, right? So I believe that based on the documentation, if you set this to true, it uses both folders and queues. But if you just set this to false, it just uses folders, right? Something that you can look into the documentation and see how it works. So I'm going to leave it at false. The related setting to this entry here, right, is if you're going to get data for queues, do you want it for all queues, right? If you don't want it for all queues, then you set it to false. But if you want to get data for all the queues, then you set it to true, right? Now, here is where you need to relate this to another setting. If you set get all queues to false, then you got to specify the name of your queues for which you want to get the data for. So remember that. So when you set this to false, you have to go in, and here you can see the documentation is very clear. If get all queues is false, if this entry is false, then specify what queues you would need. So if I go in and edit this, you can see that it says it should be a comma delimited names of those queues. If you remember, this automation summarizer is integrated with AWS Bedrock, right? And we need to tell the solution accelerator how to talk to AWS Bedrock. And the second thing, which is specific to my implementation, is I'm not using Office 365, right? I'll be using an integration service to Google. All right, so we are back to the Automation Cloud instance, and the next step to creating the integration service for AWS Bedrock is to go to integration service feature of the Automation Cloud. So I start by going to integration service. And before you do anything here, please make sure that you are selecting the folder under which you would want to create your integration service connections. So I am going to select the Automation Summarizer demo, which is the active folder we are currently working under. And then under connectors, you go to Amazon. And here you can see that there are many number of integration service connectors in the Automation Cloud. And the one that we are interested in is artificial intelligence Amazon Bedrock created by UiPath, right? So we click on this connector. This can be a bit confusing. Please ignore these three options. The option that you have to select is connect to Amazon Bedrock. The reason is because you already have a performer process that has been provided to you as part of the automation summarizer template. Therefore, we are not going to be creating any project from scratch, and therefore we just need the connection. Now, if you have not created a connection before, right? When you click on connect to Amazon Bedrock, you are going to be brought to a screen that looks like this, right? Now, please note that to set up this connection, you will need a few things. First, you will need your access ID, and then you will also need a secret key. And those details are going to be provided to you by your AWS Enterprise Administrator. If you're already an administrator, then congrats, you know how to get these keys. One of the things that I want to stress very much is please be mindful of the region. If the region has not been provided to you, please confirm which region you're operating in. And I speak purely from experience because this can take a lot of time if you have got your region wrong, because Amazon comes back with a very vague error saying that you do not have access. And you will be left wondering why that is, because you have put in your access key correctly, you have put in your secret key correctly, and you did put in the region value. You might have put in a region value, but the region value might be incorrect, right? This is especially true if you are working remote from one geographic location while your AWS instance is set in another geographic location, right? And therefore, this region should correspond to the AWS tenant, right? The region where it is set. Otherwise, you're going to get this very vague error and you will be left scratching your head and hours to troubleshoot what might be wrong. So please make sure you have the region key set correctly, right? So once you have set this up and provided that this access has been set up for you correctly, the keys are correct, when you hit connect, a connection will be set up for you. So I'm going to go ahead and hit connect to Amazon Bedrock, and I will be filling in all the details off screen, and I will see you on the other side. All right, so I have set up my AWS Bedrock integration service connection and I've successfully connected. And you will see that this connection is available to me under my deployment folder and the connections tab in integration service. One of the other things that I've been thinking now that I'm looking at it is maybe add another chapter to this series on how to set up your AWS access keys, especially for those who have not done this in the past or who would like to get oriented towards AWS Bedrock for the first time. Again, I have not yet decided that, but should there be enough interest, probably I will make a chapter to talk about that in this Solution Accelerator series. All right, so now I have the Amazon Bedrock connection. The second item that I would want to set up is the connection to my Google account that I'll be using to send notifications and email communication from my performer template, right? So as usual is the case, add connection, and then we go to Google. So it's going to ask me to connect to Gmail. I'm going to skip this detail here and see you on the other side. That's because in the past, I have made a lot of videos that have got to do with setting up connections using integration service. And you can go to the channel and look up the other videos that have got to do with integration service for Outlook, for example. So I'm going to skip the detail on this. I will connect to my Google or my Gmail account, and I will see you on the other side. All right, so I'm back. I have connected my Amazon Bedrock instance and also my Gmail inbox to this instance of the automation cloud. And this folder now has access to work with AWS Bedrock and also Gmail. So before I bring this session to an end, I would just want to make it very clear that just because you are connected to Amazon Bedrock, right? Because you're successful at uh, connecting to Amazon Bedrock, it still does not mean that you have access to the LLMs, right? So one of the other things that you need to make sure is that you have access to the model or the LLM with which you want to work with, right? So for that, you will have to request access through your enterprise AWS administrator to make sure that that model is accessible to you. And if you have your own personal subscription of Amazon, then you have to request the model access yourself. Now, I'm going to bring up a screen grab from my personal instance of AWS. And here you can see that on this page, Amazon Bedrock, going to model access. If I bring up the list of all the models in the AWS Bedrock marketplace, you see that I have access to the Claude 3 family of models, right? At least the ones that I requested at the time, right? And if you want to access any other model or you plan to work with any other model, then you will need to kind of request access to that model. Some of the things that you want to keep in mind is that you can request access to any number of models and they will be granted to you. But just because the access has been granted does not mean you're going to be billed. This, the plan that is open to all of us is the pay as you go model. And you will pay only when you start making calls to the LLM, right? When you start sending data and receiving responses back from the LLM. The second thing to note is that some of these models, when you request access to them, the request is very simple. When you click available to request, it will take you to another page and you got to select the models you want and then update your model access page submissions. But some of them, like Claude, would require you to give them or submit information on what are the use cases that you want to or you intend to work on. That is something that they are gathering data on. So a nice thing would be to submit something very reasonable and very acceptable. You know, if I would request access to these models now, I would say, you know, working towards integrating UiPath Automation Cloud with Anthropic Cloud, right? So you might get access immediately depending on which zone you are in. These models will take sometime from few seconds to several minutes or even maybe a few days to get access. But before you start working on this automation summarization template, if you plan to work with Anthropic Claude suite of models, then please make sure to go and get access, you know, at the earliest, because this will require you to fill in some use case information and submit request, right? So to summarize, having access to AWS with the access key and the secret key does not automatically open you up to use the model. You will still run into failures if those models are not accessible to you. So please do keep that in mind and make sure before we move on to the next step that your access is available. So that is all for this session. In the next session, we are going to focus on the performer template. And then there are many number of things that I saw in that performer template that we need to address. We will take a look at that in the next session. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you have learned something new. If you do, please do like and subscribe to my channel. I'll truly appreciate it. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.